Back at it, and today we are digging into depression, anxiety, mental health. We see that this is a very, very common thing that we are hearing a lot about. I'm sure we all have family members, maybe ourselves, maybe you've been going through some struggling times. But what Piotr's going to teach us today is the relation, like the correlation with the iron metabolism and stability. So I'm going to let you take over from here and just really dig into what's actually happening with all of this.
Okay. All right. So it's a very wide, complex task, which I'm going to try to simplify it so everybody gets this, as easy as I can possibly can. Let's start going back to amino acids. What glucoferrin is, it's sulfur bonded 708 amino acids, which are iron binding, sequestering, chelating protein. Very important is, I'm going to repeat this until everybody gets it or they get sick and tired of hearing it, okay? Because this is the whole premise. So when we lack those amino acids to create proteins properly and replicate our DNA to sustain our life, longevity, and the best of our genes, not the worst of our genes, okay? We need protein, okay? Protein, which is amino acid, is the only thing in our body which has DNA. Fats don't have DNA. Carbohydrates have no DNA. They are there to support the DNA from protein and would be utilized as an additional material to help our body. But DNA, it's only assigned to protein. That's who we are. And it's not my opinion. It's a scientifically proven fact all the way from the cavemen. Okay? So the deficiency of protein amino acids trigger iron binding capacity and eventually triggers formation and secretion of red blood cells and hemoglobin. When we develop that problem, later on, we develop weaknesses from our genetic messages from the parents, and we start to have conditioned metabolic disorders based on the genetic code. But a lot of us right now, as we speak, develop those problems even further. The reason is we eat every day super abundant amount of iron fortified foods. And we're not talking just a bit, it's overwhelming. When it's overwhelming, we start to develop iron overload, hemochromatosis, eventually ferroptosis, which is the 3 stages of the same thing, just each one of them it's more damaging and lifespan shortening than the other previous one. So that's how we start to develop problems with iron absorption and utilization, which is anemia. Young people, especially when we focus on young people right now, they are not taught the way we used to eat. Therefore, they basically live on processed food. Processed food has a whole list of the things which we can negate, but priority, it's iron fortification. Now, let me state very important, because there's going to be some smart people listening to me, and they will say, maybe I agree, I disagree. Well, let me clean this up so there is no disagreement here. Every chemical can cause 1 or 2 problems, or 3, or maybe more. Well, iron, it's used as a base feeding mechanism support of every human being, which means when you have a dysregulation of distribution and utilization iron in the red blood cell formation, which is the only feeding system of the human body, and we do not have the second one, which means iron overload, dysregulation, hemochromatosis, will be implicated in every single cell of your body. And that's what makes this higher priority than other chemicals, metals. They're all not good. But the priority is in iron because it's our life, which is sustained on hemoglobin, which is only supported by iron proper metabolism. Okay? Now, going further, I'm using young people again. Young people, from my experience, especially younger females, it's almost hard to find right now which one doesn't have anxiety. It's like you teenager, you have anxiety, that's your package. You know, you teenager, you have a depression. Yeah, that's how it goes. These days that's normal. Well, it's a problem because they iron overload, they process food overload, they don't utilize proteins because they lacking them, and they start to develop problem with glutathione and liver. Now, that's where we get to the culprit of the problem, okay? Liver releases glutathione. Glutathione is our master antioxidant. And that's why I mentioned about detox, okay? We don't need detox. Glutathione, it's made in our body. He will do just fine if we let him do it. Okay? We don't need any chemicals throwing to detox in the body. It's called chelation treatment, okay? The chelators are proteins, amino acids. It's all about the same thing over and over. So glutathione has to be made in our liver by 3 amino acids. And again, we go into the amino acids we mentioned before, sulfur bonded, methionine, and cysteine, and then taurine. Now, taurine, it's involved in that process, but taurine does not create proteins. It supports the function of glutathione. The other one are proteinogenesis involved, which means formation of protein. So glutathione is basically 3 amino acids, which becomes the major player in human body regulation of iron, detox, pathogens, and everything else, viruses. Now, when we go further from the liver, we get into anxiety. Well, anxiety, it's part of it is caused by dysfunction of hemoglobin, of transferring, and I mentioned before, every single cell, it has to be fed, including your hair, okay? With her red blood cells. So hemoglobin supposed to be functional. If it's not functional, you will diminish support of every cell in the body from oxygen and glycogen and sulfur and nitrogen. Well, let's focus on those 2 major ones, okay? The first one is oxygen. It's called hypoxia. It's reduced oxygen level. Second one, it's called hypoglycemia. It's reduced glycogen level. So now I'm going to use analogy because analogies always work. When you don't have a glycogen and oxygen, tell me, Christa, would you like to feel like if I cut down 5% of those things from your body, are you going to be really ready to go to gym and exercise? No, you're going to take a nap.
Yeah.
Well, that's happened to your brain too. He's going to go into stage of nap. He's going to get tired. He's going to get foggy. It's going to get negative thoughts. It's going to have fear because everything is based on it. Your decision maker is going to be disrupted. You're going to go to car, you wouldn't know where you're going. You're going to talk to the friend and you're going to forget what you want to say to the friend. And it's all hypoxia and hypoglycemia. Now, this is the first part. The second part is you're not feeding your brain. Well, that's the first part. Second thing, glutathione, methionine, and cysteine, besides glutathione, they are also involved in making serotonin. Actually, methionine, it's used to make serotonin. and it helps with cysteine to go to methylation process to release from serotonin melatonin. So if you don't have those amino acids again loaded with oxygen and glycogen, you're going to have suppression of serotonin, which is stimulated during the daytime to make us happy, and then conversion and triggered by nighttime, lack of light, stimulation and secretion by pineal gland of melatonin, which while we sleep connected with circadian cycle, the cycle of Earth. Well, if you're going to have few days of disruption of happy hormone and sleeping hormone and feel good hormone, well, you're going to be really anxious because last time I checked, sleep deprivation was the worst type of torture on human body. So right there, you get to the first stage. Now, second stage, it's during the day. When people don't have energy, they cannot perform. Well, hypoxia and glycogen, it's also involving muscles. Well, there is a muscle called diaphragm, which makes us breathe. Well, when you have a reduction of nitrogen, nitric oxide, sulfur, glycogen, and oxygen, every muscle develop what they call lactic acidosis, which means you have not proper ATP energy breakdown in the muscle tissue, which makes you muscle sore and sluggish. Well, when you sore, you can hardly walk. But how about if your muscle, which makes you breathe, feels the same way? All of a sudden, you start to have, well, and then you don't have a red blood cells with ferritin properly transferring, distribute hemoglobin in the lung tissue and bronchus, okay, called alveoli, and you start to get low oxygen and hypoxia and hypoglycemia in your lungs. Well, that's anxiety. Well, with anxiety, what is happening is the second is fear, because we are in fear that we're going to suffocate. Well, hemochromatosis, when it's already with ferritin level overload, turns in ferroptosis. Ferroptosis, it's called oxidative stress, basically corrosion and rusting process on the cellular level. Ferroptosis, it's involved in neurological problems such as Alzheimer, Parkinson's. It's all known all around the world. And it causes oxidative stress, which causes deplenishment even further of vital nutrients such as oxygen and glycogen and sulfur and nitrogen in the brain cells. Well, then the brain gonna get really foggy. Well, ferroptosis, it's a definition of it. I don't like to say sometimes because people don't like to hear it, but it's accelerated cellular iron-induced cellular death. And that is depression combined with anxiety. Now, when this feeding mechanism is disrupted every single day, your level of oxygen goes down, your level of glycogen goes down, and after a month or 2 months, you're chronically depressed. There is two types of depressions. One, and I actually work in psychiatry business in my first life in the United States for 3 years, so I'm very familiar with that, is clinical depression, situational depression, and also metabolic depression. Metabolic depression is the most common because come from iron overload process and nutrient depleted food. Okay? Now, why do we always, when we exercise, we talk about proteins? Well, to get the boost to the muscles. Well, the brain needs the boost too. You thought when we develop ferroptosis, which exactly Alzheimer happens. It's called hippocampus. And it's responsible for daily learning and also processing of the thought process. If that doesn't work, we lose ability to learn and to memorize. The second part is substantia nigra, is the part with dopamine. It's properly formed, and GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid is created, and GABA, it's actually made from methionine, okay? So methionine actually creates GABA. So now we have iron overload on substantia nigra outside, but inside, by scans, we can detect iron deficiency, but it's caused from the outside sealing of that part of the brain, preventing from nutrients to get inside to create proper release of dopamine in the body. Well, then we have a problem with the mental capacity as well as physical capacity. Okay? Now, why I say both? Do you ever see person depressed going to gym?
No. Well,
No.
I mean, it depends if they have burpees in their workout, then
What do you have?
if they have burpees in their workout,
Well, and then you crash after.
yeah, or they're just really sad about it.
And then you cannot recover for a week after.
Yeah.
And you try to figure out what happened to you.
Right.
So you see, so this is how metabolism of iron, it's involved in anxiety and depression in the most easy way I can describe. And again, this is not opinion. It's a metabolic physiological fact in human body.
Yeah, like, so one of the things that you touched on in the beginning, and I've heard this so many times with what I would call the smarter colleagues I've worked with, they would say things like, you can survive and never eat a carb again. I know that we know that we need protein and stuff. Like you need certain things in order to actually live. And that you always talk about the protein, right? And then
okay, let me tell you something. In human body, every day it's a transition, positive or negative. We call this in metabolism a cascade.
Right.
Now, why cancer is so prevalent in bodybuilders and sport people? You tell me.
I don't know. I see it in so many people that aren't.
So their opinion, it's based not on scientific proof, and I'm not telling about choices of eating, no. Every single person needs transitional time. You cannot take the baby and make it run, yes? It has to start to crawl, and start to walk, and start to little run, then run faster. Metabolism is the same way. Now, a lot of guys, they say, oh, you can go. No, they're not familiar with condition called alpha-gal or galactosemia. Once they get familiar with that, they will change very quickly their opinion. Trust me.
Okay, so we now understand like the connection that we have to the mental stability in people, like the mental wellness and the brain and how all that works. And then on top of it, we just keep giving it more, because like a lot of people don't understand the connection between even their gut and their brain, and even like that, right? Like
the gut is regulated by iron.
right.
Or you bacteria, hepcidin, everything in your body, it's regulated by iron, your gut flora, everything. So it does affect your brain because it based how much iron you actually extract, how much iron you process, how much iron you store, and how much iron you utilize for red blood cells. And that's what it related to gut flora. Because remember, bacteria doesn't go to the brain. It's the process which bacteria is involved, and it needs iron to be regulated and gut flora to order to be actually influential on the other stage, because that's why you have an endocrine system and endocrine and exocrine. Okay, now digestive system, it's exocrine. Okay, the brain, it's endocrine. See, you cannot miss and match. The endocrine, it's sealed. The exocrine, it's open to the outside. You see, so this is, again, it's a human endocrinology, which a lot of people don't understand. It's not just simple, oh, you take probiotics, you're going to be fine. It doesn't work that way. It's a lot more complex. But the whole point is what we're saying right now, we're introducing glucoferrin, which is going to be for people who are carnivorous, okay, who are people who are vegetarians, who are people who are keto, who are people who don't know who they really even are.
Right.
But we have a glucoferrin, a solution for their metabolic dysregulation. Once they start to feel, and trust me, after 3 cycles of 120 days of degradation of red blood cells in hemoglobin, I can tell that they're gonna first time wake up and say, I think I realized who I am. Well, then you make your conscious decision what lifestyle you're going to choose. Before that, you're just jumping from one side to the other because you don't even know who you are and how to control your metabolic performance, because in the body, everything is about metabolic stability of the nutrients. Okay, so that's how glucoferrin helps people to get them where they want to be. And then when they're healthy, they're going to make choices. And I'm fine with every choice of every person, who they want to be, what they want to eat. I'm just perfectly okay with it.
Well, I think we're going to end that one there because I feel like there's so many nuggets that we can just take away from this, once again, opportunity to have you, speak with us. And this is a deeper one today. And I feel like, anyone that really needs support, I often hear from a lot of people, like, I don't want to be taking this medicine anymore but I need it, or I don't know how to come off of it. And, a lot of the times we start with, let's start right. Like you said, like, what happens when you move? You start to feel better. You start to feed yourself better. You start to become and look at yourself in the mirror. I was reading a client check-in today, and she's like, I actually like who I'm becoming now, and these are the things that we really strive for. I think the mental health, like even the brain, is really important to me as my mom with Parkinson's. Like, I really care about trying to figure out a way to like support her. So we finally got her on board. Just with all your guidance. I'm just grateful to have you here today. If there's any last words that you have in this topic, otherwise I think that's a good way to close off.
I do have a last word. I always have a last word.
Okay.
I did some write-up, and Dr. Kristy is very familiar with the write-up. And I wrote in one write-up about hemoglobin, the only feeding system we have. And I wrote very important sentence. When you metabolize iron properly, the iron gets inside the cells and makes you a strong. This is called the Iron Man. When your iron is stuck outside the cell, your epitome of Iron Man, you are just become a weak person, mentally and physically. And we have a solution to help you with it.
We're stuck.